rocking.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
What in the world is going on, everybody? Hello, and welcome to On the Pipe Podcast. Today is Monday, May the 29th, 2023, years after zero. But even more importantly than that, today is Memorial Day. That is right. This was an extended holiday weekend, so a lot of people think of Memorial Day. Hey, let's go out on a boat, grill some hamburgers, grill some hot dogs, have a good time. We're off work. We can drink on Sunday. So, I want to start it off. Let's think about the reason for Memorial Day. Think about the troops that have made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives for this country. There's Veterans Day, where we honor those who have served, and then there's Memorial Day, where we honor those that have perished in combat, perished in battle. And without the men and women of our military, we would not be allowed to ride our dirt bikes. We wouldn't be able to race our dirt bikes. We wouldn't be allowed to listen to shows about dirt bikes. So just want to start out the show with that because today is Memorial Day. I've actually been in here printing T-shirts all day long, where I'll be all week printing T-shirts all day long. So if you need T-shirts, hit me up. No, but yeah, Memorial Day is one of those days that really hits home for me. By the way, I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepherdson. Forgot to drop that part at the beginning. But, yeah, this weekend at Mideast, because it was Memorial Day weekend, there's a Patriots class, a Patriots row that is at the Mideast Hare Scramble, and that's something that we've been seeing throughout a lot of race series. I mean, I think most race series have some type of Patriots row, whether they call it that or the Warrior class at Full Gas. There's one at GNCC. There's one at a lot of races now. So one of the things that we did is with the Patriots row out there, we actually played taps. So that's the trumpet that you hear playing at a military member's funeral. And the way it works is I kind of play music off my phone, like the Star Spangled Banner. I play it off my phone and into the microphone, which this weekend, terrible feedback. It was from the microphone. It was squealing and making the worst noises you ever heard, and everyone's just staring at me, and I can't do anything about it. But before that, we were playing taps while we were right before the race to honor the fallen veterans and to honor that Patriots row that was out there with us. And it was just one of those things where while we were playing it and the music was playing throughout the loudspeakers throughout the place, I got the biggest cold chills about me. And that's when it really just kind of sank in, like, hey, Memorial Day, this is what it is. This is what it's about. So want to start off the show, first and foremost, say Happy Memorial Day. I hope you guys enjoyed your day. If you did have the day off, I hope everyone had a safe day, and I hope everyone had a good weekend of racing. That being said, we had a ton of racing going on. There is so much to talk about. I seriously, I got an entire page of notes in front of me, and I still feel like I'm missing something. There was so much racing that went on this weekend, from the left coast to the right coast, local races, regional races, national races, and everything in between. There was a ton of racing, and I'm stoked to get into it, dive right into it. We're not going to waste any more time jib-jabbing, or there's no 20-minute rants about all sorts of stuff this week. We're going right into racing. We're going to talk about it, and I'm excited that you join us, and I'm excited that you're here for another episode of OTP's Weekend Review. But first, I do have to let you guys know that, as always, these shows, this race result, OTP, and all of the above is brought to you by our official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast, and you all know that is Beta Motorcycles, because Beta Motorcycles has been family-owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles. They're known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta motorcycles are the best-looking bikes on the market, and they back it up with their superior performance. Head on over to betausa.com for more information on their available models, or to find a dealer near you to get yours today. We got a couple of betas on podiums across the country that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But before that, this episode is brought to you also in part by Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer and a financial advisor that can help you win when it comes to retirement or financial planning. Go over to financialadvisorsdenvernc.com, fill out the form, let Zach know you're a listener of OTP, and you'll get a free consultation to figure out what it is that he can do. You don't have to have $1 million. You just have to have some ambition and some wanting to save and invest for your future. That's all you need. You can be making minimum wage, and still it can help you tremendously. So check them out, financialadvisorsdenvernc.com. As I mentioned, we have racing all over the country to talk about. We got the dueling Sprint Enduro series to talk about. We've got Mideast Hair Scrambles, where I happen to be at, which I think we're changing the name to Mideast, because I'm pretty sure after 8 rounds, 7 of them have been in the mud. We got Jday going on up north. We got U.S. Hard Enduro happening in, is that the Midwest? No, it was in Pennsylvania. So whatever that is, it's up north too. And then WORCS racing out west. So I think those are the major ones that we're going to hit. Without further delay, let's get right into it. Let's start with Mideast Hair Scrambles. That's where I was at. If you see it raining at a GNCC or a National Enduro or anywhere that there is, and there's a person that you would like to bet on, who's going to win? Find someone that runs the Mideast series, because Mideast does not cancel for anything. There's rain dates on the calendar. I have no idea why, because I've only seen, I think, 2 races canceled ever in the history of Mideast racing. One was a hurricane, and one, I forget, it might have been another hurricane. It was some other big storm coming through, so they canceled it, and then it ended up not raining at all. And I think because he finally canceled one and it didn't rain, I don't think Buren's ever going to cancel another race ever again, just for fear of that happening. But Mideast, it was another mudder. It wasn't really that bad. So it was supposed to rain all weekend. It held off most of the day on Saturday. So the pro quad race on Saturday was still dusty, like legit dusty. It hadn't even started raining. And then it rained a good bit in the afternoon. And then the track really came around perfect. Like, if it would have not rained again after that, it would have been perfect, like epic conditions. But then it didn't rain again for a while, and then halfway through the night, the sky fell out, and it kind of rained on through the next day as well. But it was a good race, nonetheless. It was a good track. Everyone said it was a good track. I think everyone had a good time that was out there. But Jonathan Johnson came out, a little sibling rivalry with Brody Johnson. So Brody Johnson, pretty sure is a former overall Mideast champion. If not, he's a Mideast local legend. He's a good Mideast rider. We all know that. But Brody's been coming back from a couple of injuries and really hasn't been out at Mideast that much. He's been racing at the GNCCs, but I think this was the first time I've seen him at a Mideast that I can remember in quite some time. So Jonathan Johnson, Brody Johnson, they come out to battle. Papa Johnson, Jeffrey Johnson, he was on the overall podium again in the morning. So he's been racing, trying to get back in shape, show them boys the fast line around the track. He was on the overall podium in the morning as well. But at the end of the day, Jonathan Johnson would get the better of Brody Johnson. He kind of pulled a gap, and I don't know if you saw the video, but one of the Mideast races, it was a mud race. Jonathan was so far ahead that he stopped at the finish line and did a full-on interview with me in the middle of the race. And he was kind of joking around and like hinting towards himself and yelling when he went by. Well, then he come around on lap, I think it was 4, and he went to stop, and he was like, I thought he was about to say something to me, but then he looked over and saw Brody. So Brody had made up that gap and was coming into the finish line section as well. So Johnny had to put his head down and hammer down, but Brody about caught him. I think the official time was like 31 seconds when they scanned in that lap. But Johnny ended up getting the win over Brody Johnson. Then Nick DeFeo and Michael DeLosa, they had a battle of their own that went on throughout the whole entire race. That was a good race as well for that final podium spot. But at the end of the day, it was Nick DeFeo, the T-Rex himself, that put himself on the overall podium once again at Mideast. So he's been coming out and racing the pro class and having really good rides and having a successful season at all, or a successful season overall. But even more important than that, his mom brought me cookies again. And so if Nick wasn't on the podium, I might have to try to dive in that computer and see if I can shave some time off for him, because now we got to play favoritism. So thank you for the cookies, and thank you for the good battle that we watched out there at Mideast. Now, There was a couple of Sprint Enduros that were happening. One up in Pennsylvania. That was the U.S. Sprint Enduro at the high voltage property. And then there was a full gas Sprint Enduro just down the road from Mideast. I think it's officially in Union, South Carolina. Same town as Big Buck is in at Revolution MX down there. So full gas, it was Lane Michael that would take the win there. So Lane Michael went out there, took the win over Josh Strang and Ricky Russell. So Lane Michael would end up taking the overall win. Josh Strang in the number 2 spot, and then just pulling it up again real quick just to refresh my memory. So Josh Strang would take the number 2 spot, and then Ricky Russell clicked off a couple test wins of his own, ended up 3rd place on the day, and then Stu Baylor was actually out there racing, ended up 4th place in that pro class. So Lane Michael hurt shoulder again. We saw that after one of the GNCCs, and it was Camp Coker where he hurt his shoulder again. He made a post about it, so it's good to see him back out on the bike. Not only back out on the bike, but, I mean, dude's been through a lot. Hurt his shoulder, and then the next week after that has the birth of his first kid, and so he's out there with a bum shoulder and probably limited sleep and is able to come away with that win. Josh Strang keeping him honest, clicking off a couple test wins of his own and battling back and forth for that one. And then Josh Strang actually did a warrior class riding day that was totally free. So one thing about Strang, he's always talked about the veterans and talked about stuff going on, and he's a guy that likes to give back as much as he can. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea. They did a free riding class for all the warrior class riders, and Strang volunteered his time for that. So hopefully that went swimmingly as well. But those were your top 3 overall in the pro class. And then looking down at the Pro 2 class, Mason Simmons would take the Pro 2 win, 4th place overall. So 4th place just behind Ricky Russell and just ahead of Stu Baylor was the Pro 2 winner, Mason Simmons. And then Zach Hayes would get 2nd place in the Pro 2 class. And then the Pro-Am class. If you weren't around racing just a few years ago, then you might have looked at this Pro-Am class results and said, who in the world is Braxton McGee? But if you were around back then, and by back then I mean like just a few years ago, Braxton McGee, Connor Smith, all them dudes, they were all pushing each other, and they were all like, they were the guys. They were the top AMs. They were the ones battling for the deals. I think Braxton actually had like a satellite Yamaha ride and was on Jason Reigns' team. That was like a sub Yamaha and Pro ride. Anyway, nonetheless, Braxton McGee took a little bit of time away from the sport, and ever since then, every time I see him, hey, when are you going to come back riding? Try to give him crap. Try to get him encouraged to come back. And then this year, I think we've actually talked about it on the show, but he's been out and doing a little bit of racing again. But this weekend, he goes out and gets the Pro-Am win over Tyler Palmer and Dylan De La Cruz. So it's not even like it was an empty class or there wasn't anything going on. Braxton McGee straight up won that race over 2 of the top amateurs in the sport right now in Tyler Palmer and Dylan De La Cruz. So Braxton McGee back in action. So now we just got to see him keep on pushing. Maybe we can get him back out at some GNCCs and going for it once again. So that was your Pro-Am winner. Mackenzie Tricker would end up winning the women's pro class. Kylie Saunders gets 2nd place in that women's pro class. And then we head up north to the U.S. Sprint Enduro. Johnny Gerard, the reigning and defending champion up there. We saw him take the win again on the weekend. He won every single test of the weekend except for 2. So Johnny Gerard got that sprint speed. He's riding high off those sprint victories and then also GNCC overall victory as well. But he comes out, grabs another U.S. Sprint Enduro victory. 2nd place overall, it was Gus Reardon. So they were kind of battling back and forth. Gus Reardon would end the day 1st place in the Pro 2 class, 2nd place overall in the day. And then Cody Barnes would round out the overall podium with a 2nd place finish in the Pro 2 class, good enough for 3rd place overall. So your overall, Johnny Gerard, Gus Reardon, Cody Barnes. But if you look at the Pro 1 class itself, it was Johnny Gerard in the number 1 spot, Tyler Braniff in the number 2 spot, and Brendan Poling in 3rd. And then take a look down at Pro 2. Gus Reardon gets that Pro 2 win, 2nd place overall on the weekend. Cody Barnes, 2nd place in Pro 2, 3rd place overall, and then Rui Barbosa would round out the Pro 2 class podium. So those guys are all battling every weekend. No matter where they're at, what discipline it is, those three are all battling each other, keeping each other honest. Taking a look at the Pro-Am class there, Dominic Morse took the win over Jason Tino. And then in the women's class, Rachel Archer would take the win for the weekend. Rachel Goodish would end up second place on the weekend, and then Anna McKelvey would end up third place on the weekend. But Rachel Goodish, we've talked about her before. We've talked about her being an insane person, and I mean that in the most endearing way possible, because not only did she race the U.S. Sprint Enduro, but she raced the U.S. Hard Enduro as well. So, raced the U.S. Hard Enduro on Saturday, and then makes a drive over and races U.S. Sprint Enduro on Sunday. And even took a test win on Sunday. I think she won the final test of the day. But speaking of that, we'll head into those U.S. Hard Enduro results. It was Tough Like RORR up in Pennsylvania, a race that a lot of people look forward to. A race that I wish I could go to. Every year, it looks like an awesome race. Every year. I say I'm going to try to get up there, but every year, there's always something going on, whether it's announcing a Mideast race or announcing a full gas race. Haven't been able to make it up there yet to that track. But you know who did make it up there? Tristan Hart. You know what he didn't need to get a win? Foot pegs. That is right. I saw this video. I couldn't believe my mind. I had to go back and watch it. At the beginning of the race, Tristan Hart had a crash that took off not one foot peg, both foot pegs. And he raced the rest of the 3-hour race with no foot pegs. Like, there was just a little nub. First of all, riding a dirt bike in those conditions is hard enough. I don't understand how those hard enduro guys do it. They ride dirt bikes off stuff that I can't climb up on all fours. And to do that with no foot pegs too, absolutely insane. So Tristan Hart takes the overall win with no foot pegs. Cody Webb ends up in the number 2 spot, and Johnny Walker puts another beta on a podium. So Johnny Walker's first U.S. Hard Enduro event that he has raced, he ends the day third place overall. So shout out Johnny Walker, shout out Cody Webb in that number 2 spot, and shout out Tristan Hart for getting it done. In the women's class, it was Sandra Gomez who would take the overall win and 26th place overall, which is absolutely absurd as well. As we mentioned a little bit ago, Rachel Goodish was there, and she raced, and she podiumed. So second place at the U.S. Hard Enduro and second place at the U.S. Sprint Enduro for Rachel Goodish. And then rounding out the women's pro class podium at the U.S. Hard Enduro, it was Haley Marks. So what a weekend of racing. All sorts of stuff going on. And the Sprint Enduros, with full gas changing ownership, changing hands, it'll be interesting to see how that works next year, because I believe, just reading into it, and I'm not going in any inside information here. I'm just going to talk about what his public knowledge on the post. And it looks like they were trying to do 15 rounds. First of all, don't know where the 15 weekends are going to fit in at, but 3 different disciplines, so 5 rounds of each discipline. So they plan to do 5 Sprint Enduros still, so I wonder how that's going to split up this crowd, because I talked about it briefly before, but it'd be cool to see. Like, it's such a cool form of racing, and it's modeled after the ISDE, and it helps with all of our ISDE team success as we go overseas and go to the ISDE races each year. But I want to see everyone together. Like, the fan in me wants to see everyone at one. But, I mean, you got the factory guys at one, you got the factory guys at the other, you got a pro class with 1 factory guy at one, you got a pro class with 4 factory guys at the other, but then you got all the XC2 heavy hitters at one and just a 1 at the other. And so it's kind of hard going back, even all the way back to the Vet A classes. So Jason Thomas raced Vet A. Jason Thomas is a 3-time GNCC champion, 2-time XC2, 1-time XC3. He raced Vet A at the U.S. Sprint Enduro and got beat by Heath Herring. So shout out Heath Herring, team manager for Phoenix Racing Honda. But then Glenn Drum. Glenn Drum was another local legend from back in the day and a pro rider. He raced Vet A at full gas. I want to see Glenn Drum versus Jason Thomas versus Heath Herring. So it's not even just the pro classes. It's all the classes. I want to see how it all stacks up. So I don't know what's going to happen next year with full gas changing directions and changing what they're doing. So I guess it's all left for interpretation and to be decided. But I mean, like Rachel Archer and Mackenzie Trigger, like seeing those battles, I don't know. Just want everybody all in one place. Taylor Jones, when she was healthy. Hopefully we can see her back healthy again in racing. I don't know when she plans to make her return, but those were some of the best battles back in the day, is watching that women's pro class and watching the Pro 1 class with everyone in it, watching the Pro 2 class with everyone in it, watching the Pro-Am class with everyone in it. So maybe we'll see that again one day. I'm not sure how it goes or where it goes from here, but it's wishful thinking nonetheless. Staying on the East Coast, it was also round number 4 of the Jday Off-Road Series. This was the Robert Gerard Trucking Memorial, or the Robert Gerard Memorial Race, courtesy of Gerard Construction, Gerard Trucking. The Dozer Memorial Grand Prix. It happened over the weekend, so obviously Johnny Gerard, a big part of that. He couldn't be there because he was at that U.S. Sprint Enduro, but that's a cool memorial race that they do every year up there. So it was a good racing as well. Brandon Gregor would end up taking the overall win. Toby Cleveland, who's been an XC3 standout, would take second place overall on the day after 2 motos. And then Nick Cordana would end the day third place overall. And then we look at the women's pro riders, Corey Steed going out there and getting it done, grabbing the overall win. Ruby Fustini would end the day second place in the women's pro class. And then Savannah Kipp rounding out the pro women's podium at the Dozer Memorial GP, the Jday off-road event that was going on up there. And then we move out west to Utah, where WORCS Racing was having another round as well. Tyler Lynn would be who took the overall win. So want to hear more from these West Coast folks. We gotta get ourselves in there. We gotta get ourselves in the mix. We gotta figure out what's going on, feel the heartbeat of the West. So Tyler Lynn, Utah native, he ends up taking the win on a Kawasaki. Justin Hoft on a Yamaha in the number 2 spot, and then Zach Bell would round out the overall podium for the 450 class out at that WORCS race. And then you look down at the Pro 2 class, or the 250 Pro class. Jack Simpson would take the win there. Colton Ake would be in the number 2 spot, and then Jake Alvarez would round out the 250 Pro class podium. And then you take a look at the women's pro class. We talked about Brandy Richards and her return last time. She picks up right where she left off, takes the win at the WORCS Racing as well. Caitlin Jacobs would be the number 2 pro woman rider overall, and then Lauren Woods rounding out the final podium position there. So there you have it. Results from across the country, East Coast to West Coast, big to little, small, whatever you want to say. All sorts of stuff going on. And that was all the off-road racing results. So hopefully these shows do something for you. Hopefully you can get your fix of off-road racing and keep up to date with what's going on, because tracking down all these results isn't easy. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that. So try to make it one consolidated place where you can hear all about it. But there is one more thing that I want to get into that revolves around off-road racing, but may not be exactly the world of off-road racing. Shout out Paul Alley. He messaged me and said, hey, did you know Dante Oliveira is racing pro motocross? And he said, the only reason I know who he is because I listened to your show. And keep in mind, it's hard. I'm sure a lot of the West Coast guys don't necessarily know what's going on the East Coast, and a lot of the East Coast guys don't necessarily know what's going on at the West Coast. So if you listen to these shows, then you hear me bring up Dante Oliveira quite a bit. You want to know why I bring him up quite a bit? Because he wins quite a bit. He has quite a bit of success on the factory KTM team on the West Coast. He also has quite a bit of success at the ISDE. I think he was like the club overall winner a couple years ago, and had a really good run last year on the trophy teams as well. So Dante Oliveira decided that he was going to race pro motocross, and I really haven't been able to look and dive in and see, was this a one-time thing? Was this just the opener because he's not racing WORCS? Or is he going to try to race more of these? I don't know. But he had a pretty good showing. 15th place in Moto 1, 12th place in Moto 2. So for an off-road guy coming into the motocross world, not too shabby. 15-12. You'll take it. Scoring points. So that was cool to see, and cool to see Dante Oliveira out there as well. Speaking of that, I get a lot of people that ask why we don't talk about motocross and supercross. And I guess if people that have been listening to the show for a while, you probably know the answer to this. But I know that with our growth on social media and just growth in racing in general, that we have quite a bit of followers and listeners on here that haven't been around since the beginning. And that came up again over the weekend, and a lot of it was related to this exact scenario right here. But when I started this thing over 6 years ago, there was no media for off-road racing. There still is barely any media for off-road racing, and I feel like we've put a big dent in that. As far as especially like socials and videos and stuff is concerned, there are none bigger than On the Pipe podcast. So that's a fact and a stat that I'm pretty proud of, especially when you look at the numbers of the podcast, of the videos, of everything going on. So that's something I'm pretty proud of. But when I started this whole thing, I wasn't competing against anybody. And even now, like, I don't feel like I'm competing against anybody because I'm just doing the same thing I've been doing, trying to bring you results, trying to bring you what's going on in the off-road world, and really trying to shine that spotlight a little bit brighter on all these off-road pro riders. That being said, pro motocross and supercross, everywhere you look, man, they got TV deals, they got magazines, they got tons and tons and tons of podcasts, they got podcasts galore for motocross and supercross. And it's one of those double-edged swords because if I did start covering Supercross and Motocross, that's a lot bigger fan base. It's more known to the public. You know what I mean? Like the Eli Tomacs, the Jet Lawrences, the Chase Sextons. There's more of a fan base to talk about those guys than there might be for our off-road world. And that's fine. That's okay. That right there is the gap that I'm trying to bridge. I'm trying to get to the point where people are following off-road just as tightly, just as closely as they're following pro motocross and supercross. So the double-edged sword is that if I start talking about it and covering it, I could instantly grow the fan base, instantly grow the show, instantly grow the results that we're getting and get much bigger, much quicker. But that's not what I want to do. They get plenty of shine. They get plenty of money. They get plenty of stuff going on in the media world. This On the Pipe podcast was started to cover off-road racing and off-road riders, and so that's why we try to stick straight to that lane. And to be honest with you, I think I only watched like 2 or 3 supercross races all year. I didn't get to watch this past weekend's pro motocross race, just checked in with the results. And realistically, like, I'm kind of out of touch with supercross and motocross. I don't watch much of it because I'm so involved in the off-road world. So that, like I said, it came up from a couple different people in a crowd I was with this weekend. So I know it's been a while since we kind of talked about it on here, but that is the reasoning. They got their shine, they got their TV, they got their podcast. We're trying to grow that thing for off-road. We're trying to get off-road up at the top pedestal, just like pro motocross and pro supercross, and have those names just as synonymous as the motocross and supercross guys. But that being said, when off-road riders like Caleb Russell decide to go race pro motocross, or when Dante Oliveira decides to go race pro motocross, or when Zach Osborne decides to come over and race off-road, we're going to be on it because we care about off-road. So hope any of that makes sense. Hope you got a little nugget of information throughout this podcast, and want to thank you so much for tuning in with us and being here with us. If you could, please, wherever you're listening to this podcast at, leave a review. So give me a 5-star rating, hopefully. If you don't want to give me a 5-star, then maybe just don't leave a review. You know what I mean? But no, I encourage honesty. That being said, it goes a long way in helping this show get in front of new people, more people that don't necessarily understand that there are podcasts about off-road. So if you could, drop a review, rate the podcast wherever you're listening at, and don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening at as well, because that also goes a long way in helping as well and letting you be the first to hear the podcast each week. So thank you, as always, for supporting this show. And very busy week on my end, but we're going to try everything we can to get OTP Tuesday. And I got some people in mind. I sent out the homing pigeon to drop off some letters. We'll see if it comes back. We'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time on the Pipe Podcast.